Super Mario Sunshine has been known to be riddled with glitches, and even though some of them have been used to complete the in-game worlds faster, there has been nothing truly game-breaking. Until now. So what's even happening here? Well, if you watched my video on how people essentially reprogrammed games using just their controller, you'll know that this is in effect the same thing. Though if you haven't, I'll give a brief recap. Over time, glitch hunters would find glitches in games that may not do too much on their own, but some very talented people would be able to brainstorm a way to use these glitches to their advantage. After putting the game in a vulnerable state by using the glitches, and with some internal knowledge of how the game works, they're able to have the game console read controller inputs and somehow translate that as working code, which can be used to do pretty much anything they want in the game. This would be considered arbitrary code execution, or ACE for short. Similarly to what glitch hunters did in the games that I mentioned in that previous video, it would be discovered that ACE was also applicable to Super Mario Sunshine, with the initial blueprints of this application dating as far back as 2020. But before we get into the more convoluted details, I need to mention a key piece of information, as you'll be hearing me talk about it throughout the video. It's important to understand the difference between the two types of cutscenes within Super Mario Sunshine: in-game cutscenes and movies. In-game cutscenes utilize real-time 3D models and environments from the game engine, allowing for seamless transitions between cutscenes and gameplay. The movies, on the other hand, are exactly as they sound. They rely on pre-rendered video files, such as MP4s, which are fixed in quality and perspective, and usually play a more pivotal role in the actual storytelling. It's the in-game cutscene specifically that I'll be going over a lot during this video. But now that we got the boring stuff out of the way, strap in, because this gets complicated. Glitch hunter Noki Doki would remember an already known glitch where you could collect one of the game's shine sprites, Mario Sunshine's main collectible, while a different in-game cutscene was playing. This act of having another in-game cutscene playing while collecting a shine sprite would cause the game to crash. Being knowledgeable in reverse engineering and the game itself, Noki Doki would begin investigating why this glitch would result in crashes. Eventually Noki figured out a way to avoid the crash, but he wouldn't have much more in mind. Until an idea struck him. What if you could play an in-game cutscene on a different map than where you originally were? Now this of course would not be an intended feature for Mario Sunshine to do, but if this idea were applied, in theory, you could have that cutscene activate some other unrelated area of the console's memory, to which you could then force the game to do whatever you want, a la Ace. That's the gist of the idea, though there would be many more things happening in between. In fact, it can be so convoluted that I'll lay down a diagram of the important points which will show what's actually happening. The first step involves cutscenes. In Sunshine, the in-game cutscenes that play are temporarily stored in the console's memory, inside what are known as cutscene slots. In each slot, the game will also keep track of when a cutscene starts and when it ends. Most of the time this wouldn't mean a whole lot, as when opening a Shine selection screen, or when returning to the title screen, for example, those cutscene slots would be wiped clean from memory. However, if those cutscenes were to remain in their slots, you could essentially have the game replay them, using a glitch known as cutscene underflow. When collecting a shine sprite while another in-game cutscene is playing, the game will bug out, and think that the shine sprite collection cutscene ended twice. Since this cutscene underflow would throw off the normal balance of things, the console would then run through all 8 cutscene slots, thinking that there are more cutscenes to play. Noki would ultimately hope that by modifying and then replaying the cutscene, he could warp straight to the final boss. That was the idea. However, the challenge then was to figure out what cutscene would work with this idea. After over a month of research, Noki Doki would find something. The in-game cutscene of the shine sprite that spawns after fighting the eel boss in Noki Bay's 4th mission. When this cutscene is loaded into the 4th cutscene slot, The actions that cutscene tries to perform just so happen to line up with another function in the game, due to coincidentally having the same in-game memory value. What is this other function? It's a spot reserved in memory that keeps track of water droplets. This function is used so that the game will know to make each of the water droplets splash when it hits the ground. Now that's step 2, but in order for step 2 to actually work, Noki Doki needed to have the right setting for it. What do I mean by that? Well, during a playthrough of Mario Sunshine, the darkness that looms over the game's main hub world, Delfino Plaza, will eventually be wiped away, but there are multiple events that take place in the plaza over the course of a playthrough. It's in each one of these events where something interesting is happening behind the scenes. For each event, instead of loading in objects and changing the lighting, the game instead loads an entirely new Delfino Plaza. So for example, the plaza once the game is beaten is actually a completely different level from the plaza that has this polluted piranha plant enemy blocking the entrance to Rico Harbor. And it's specifically this version of the plaza that Noki Doki found would work to get this ace exploit started. So to briefly revisit, step 1 involved taking this Shine Sprite spawning cutscene that comes after fighting the eel boss, and putting it in cutscene slot number 4. It goes into the 4th slot by having 3 other in-game cutscenes play first during that fight. Then, Noki Doki kills Mario just as the Shine Sprite spawns, and when choosing to continue the game, it loads the last save that was made, and Noki just so happened to save once this polluted piranha plant showed up. Even through all this, the eel's Shine Sprite cutscene is still loaded into cutscene slot number 4, and we're now in the correct plaza version to break the game wide open. Here, Noki performs a funny looking water ritual, which actually ends up influencing a water droplet from Mario's water toy Flood to land in a very precise spot. The spot the water droplet lands on just so happens to link up to another area in memory. This area in memory is used to check if the player made Mario do a spin. This whole time, the steps that have been done are used to place a metaphorical trail of breadcrumbs for the game to later follow. If this were a cartoon, Noki Doki would be the character that spins a sign around, misleading the game down a wrong path. But it's at this step where the trap is set up. After placing a barrel of water next to where a graffiti stain was, Noki then performs a series of inputs, moving Mario in different directions for precise periods of time. So what's going on here? At this point, what Noki is basically doing is writing his own custom code, but he's doing it only by moving Mario. How does that make sense? Well, it all has to do with Sunshine's internal values. Whenever Mario moves, the game keeps track of the directions you're moving for 10 in-game frames. This is Mario Sunshine's way of being able to tell if you spun the stick quick enough to make Mario himself do a spin. The movement is kept track of in an area of the game's memory called the spin buffer. Normally, this spin buffer is used only to keep track of the movement, but the stuff that Noki has done so far is not normal. Using his trail of breadcrumbs, as I called it, he can force Mario Sunshine to read the values that are stored in the spin buffer, telling it to run those values as if they were normal game code. Now it sounds like a lot, but hear me out. Once the entire ace process is finished, the game will follow the breadcrumb trail and end up being forced to do something it's not meant to do. That being reading values that were made by a GameCube controller. These values can be read by the game as code, but if you're moving around with no rhyme or reason, chances are that the code you wrote out will end up being garbage, causing the game to crash. But what if you knew exactly how to move to tell the game to do something that you want it to do? That's basically what Noki is doing here. After finishing up the precise movement, that barrel of water that was placed next to where the graffiti stain was will end up exploding. It's a small glitch that can occur, as upon washing away this stain, a blue coin will spawn. But if you don't collect the coin in time, the graffiti will spawn right back, and since the barrel filled with water was right next to it, it'll wash away again, revealing the blue coin once more. Going back to just after the custom code was written using movement, Noki dives into a Shine Sprite, and by having the Shine Collection in-game cutscene play while the other blue coin spawning cutscene plays, the cutscene underflow will begin. This is where the game follows the breadcrumb trail, and ends up falling into Noki's trap. Once it reads the values Noki laid out using the precise movement, it'll warp you straight to the final Bowser fight. This whole process would slash down the time it takes to beat Super Mario Sunshine, a game that's normally beaten in a little over an hour and 10 minutes, now done in 34 minutes and 28 seconds. The entire process is super meticulous, but Noki Doki's persistence would make this happen. Though that's where the idea of Ace for Sunshine would be shelved, with not many others interested in doing much else with it. Fast forward over 2 years later, where suddenly a brand new usage of the Ace exploit would be uploaded to the internet by Zelpiku Kirby. Alongside another user named Sue, the two would work together to beat Mario Sunshine in 9 minutes and 50 seconds. That is quite a major improvement, and with this new improvement came some changes to the formula. The new diagram would end up looking something like this. So the previous process involved putting the Noki Bay Eel's Shine Sprite cutscene into the 4th slot of the game's internal cutscene slots. Zelpiku Kirby and Sue's method is similar, however it uses something far quicker. By cleaning this bell in Delfino Plaza, a Shine Sprite will spawn above it. It's this cutscene which is now used instead of the Eel Shine Sprite cutscene. The cutscene is loaded into slot 4 after filling the first 3 slots by watching cutscenes that are in the plaza. Now you may have thought, okay, but why this cutscene in particular? Couldn't you just spawn any Shine Sprite in the plaza and get on with it? Well, no, and only specifically because this cutscene has an internal memory value that is the exact same as another element of the plaza, which will be explained shortly. But first, we need to have the right setting again. Collecting Shine Sprites in the plaza, Zelpiku Kirby progresses to the plaza version with the polluted piranha plant. Now no funny water dance rituals are happening this time, but in order to leave the trail of breadcrumbs like Noki Doki did, Zelpiku and Sue would have to find a way to link up values in memory to force the game to read code that they can create. For them to link up memory values, they would need to have found some element of the plaza that has the same memory value as the Shine Sprite cutscene that comes from cleaning this bell. As it just so happens, they found something. In Delfino Plaza, there's a gate inside a rock column which can be broken open using the turbo nozzle. We'll call this the turbo gate. By sheer coincidence, in the version of the plaza with the polluted piranha plant, this turbo gate contains a value that's the exact same as the now stored Bell Shine Sprite cutscene. Now that a connection was found, it was time to start doing extremely precise stuff. Now instead of linking up this value in memory to something else, Zelpiku Kirby and Sue would instead take that value and modify it. How? While it's rather complex to explain, I'll sum it up. Using very specific movement, you're able to manipulate the position of the gate. This means that the value of the turbo gate will change, and since both the gate and the Bell Shine Sprite cutscene have the same value, the Bell Shine Sprite cutscene's value will also end up being changed. The process is almost done, as now the area in memory for the Bell Shine Sprite cutscene is just outside of that spin buffer that I talked about earlier. By then performing cutscene underflow, where you collect a Shine Sprite while another cutscene plays, it'll run through all the cutscene slots. Once it reaches the 4th slot, it'll attempt to play the Bell Shine Sprite cutscene, and since that value was changed to be just outside of the spin buffer, it'll actually move ahead into the spin buffer. But instead of relying solely on precise stick movement while pausing like Noki Doki did, Sue had found that by using all 4 controllers for the GameCube and holding specific buttons and stick angles, they could then force the game to start the end of game movie, entirely skipping out on fighting Bowser. It's definitely a bit more advanced in how it works, but overall, they were able to completely put the normal playthrough time to shame, beating Super Mario Sunshine in just 9 minutes and 50 seconds. That is amazing. The only other 3D Mario game to receive this kind of speedy treatment is Mario 64, and even then it didn't rely on only using controller inputs and in-game values to trick the game into reading new code. Surely this is too precise for a human to do, right? Well, in fact, the previous 2 versions of this Ace exploit I showed you were all done on a computer, not a real console. This was done by taking the game and slowing it down to each individual frame of movement, where they could put in whatever inputs they wanted as they pleased, and going back to earlier states in the game if they messed up. This is a process known as tool-assisted speedrunning, or TAS for short. Like I said, wouldn't this be too hard for a human to perform? Most people would probably think, yeah. But there are those who wanted to continue to push the boundaries of what was considered possible. Sue, the co-author of Zelpiku Kirby's TAS, uploaded a video to YouTube showing that, with a ton of visual cues, a person could actually execute arbitrary code in Super Mario Sunshine. The end result would load the final version of Delfino Plaza, which would enable you to enter the game's last level, Corona Mountain, and defeat the big bad Koopa King pretty quickly. And no, before you ask, it isn't possible to enter Corona Mountain right from the get-go without any sort of code writing shenanigans. The versions of the plaza that have this gate don't actually have the loading zone that brings you into Corona Mountain, meaning if you were to try and glitch your way behind the gate, you'd just be stuck in Volcano Prison. So now it could be done by a human, though it wouldn't be easy. But who would be willing to try this for themselves? September 9th, 2024. The Japanese speedrunner Orange would complete a run in 46 minutes and 55 seconds. Already that's close to half an hour off the original 90% world record. There were a number of mistakes throughout the run, especially during the process of writing code by moving and pausing. It's similar to what Noki Doki would do in his low-optimized TAS, with some elements taken from Zelpiku Kirby and Sue's route, except the code writing part would take place in this box minigame room. Even with the complexity of this process, there would be room to retry midway through the procedure without having to do the whole setup all over again. Knowing this, for the first real-time run of this insane category, it wouldn't be too bad. Just 3 days later, speedrunner J-Cool would wind up beating that time not once, not twice, but 3 times over the course of about 4 days. With these improvements, he was certainly cementing himself in the history of Mario Sunshine speedrunning, being the fastest person ever to complete the game in just 23 minutes and 57 seconds. That was, until one more player wanted in on the action.
Luigi.
Ouija, known for running a number of different games, holding the world record in Super Mario 64's 120-star category, as well as being the overall winner in some of the speedrun challenges held by YouTuber Moist Critical, would want to try out Ace in Super Mario Sunshine for himself. He would try over and over again, failing to execute the correct code in the game. But eventually, after enough pushing, he managed to break through and beat Super Mario Sunshine's most broken speedrunning category in 23 minutes and 14 seconds.
Yes, dude. Finally. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. While this video was being made, Ouija absolutely smashed his time again, this time getting a 17:24. A sub 20 is beyond insanity, but how was it done? After brainstorming faster ways to beat the game in real time using arbitrary code, Ouija, along with the help from many other people in the Mario Sunshine speedrunning Discord, would find some new code that could be written in the box minigame room, this time allowing him to warp straight to the Bowser fight. In addition, a couple other improvements were made. For the previous real-time speedruns, they would make use of a glitch involving a shine sprite that spawns after collecting 100 coins. If you were to spawn a 100 coin shine sprite twice, while you also simultaneously play another in-game cutscene, you could grab the shine right as it spawns. In the plaza, you can do this by collecting 100 coins, talking to this Pianta that throws you in exchange for 1 coin, bringing you down to 99, and collecting another coin to spawn the shine a second time, all while playing the blue coin spawning from the graffiti cutscene. This would be very helpful, as after setting up the code they wrote in the box minigame room, they could not move with the control stick, instead having to utilize jump dives, backflips, and turning by using a special camera mode called the wide camera. Since they couldn't just walk around to get to a shine, they opted to use the easier instant shine sprite grabbing glitch in its place. But then Ouija came along with a barrel and f***ed all that up. He skipped out on getting the 100 coin shine altogether, instead placing a barrel down to clip through this wall, and getting the shine sprite that the previous task runs did. There would also be better shine sprite routing to reach the polluted piranha plant plaza. Oh, say that 3 times fast. The grind for this new route wouldn't be easy, with Ouija streaming attempts of this day in and day out. Many runs were lost, and confusion would abound. But like all his other tedious speedrun grinds, Ouija was finally able to achieve his goal. And that was right before he was scheduled to leave for an event. As of this video, Ouija 1724 is where the world record with arbitrary code execution stands. Now this isn't obsoleting the routes that don't have all this fancy mumbo jumbo, as the community thought it best to separate the ace and non-ace categories. Though without people like Noki Doki, Zilpiku Kirby, Sue, and Ouija, among others, I don't think we'd see something quite as interesting for Mario Sunshine as this. Even if it is filled with a bunch of technical jargon, everyone's work to make this a reality shouldn't go unnoticed. Who knows? While not much may be going on regarding Ace for Mario Sunshine right now, that doesn't mean that there won't be someone out there somewhere thinking of another way to break the game wide open. Only time will tell, but this category may very well be far from over. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, share your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you to everyone who helped me understand what was going on with these tricks. This video wouldn't have been possible without your help. But with that being said, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care and peace.